Okay guys, the players are complaining, the game is in a bug state, I need thoughts, suggestions, ideas, anyone.
More robots.
Rebalance the game and fix the bugs.
Anyone else?
What's up, friends of the good mood? This is Manni, and yes, that was the old intro for this occasion. We're watching the history and downfall of War Robots, an excellent video made by iTalk Games. Link down in the description, pinned comment. Go ahead, check him out. Who was excited that I was going to make a reacting to video about this. Yeah, so we're going to discuss also the points coming up. I'm going to make the volume quiet at first because there is a song probably copyrighted. I'm not sure, so. It's a really good song, and it's nice how it fits into this, but for copyright reasons, I'm gonna make it quiet here. An iTalk production, showing some real good nostalgic moments of cinematics with War Robots. I remember seeing those over the years, and they looked fantastic. They were well done, and they motivated me to play more. You know, when I saw them, I wanted to play some more War Robots back then. And let's not fool ourselves. The game has been a great game for many years, right? And the gameplay even today is not terrible. It's everything around the gameplay that is wrong, in my opinion. The entire marketing around the game, the emphasis and the priority on serving just the high spenders. That's the problem. So let's go.
Because it's the first video game I technically ever played. I vaguely remember downloading it onto my Lenovo tablet around 2016, just looking for a game to play in my free time.
Good old times.
After 2 years of playing the game, I set it aside as I had gotten a Nintendo Switch for my birthday.
Oh.
I didn't think I would ever play War Robots again. That is, until I got a phone in 2021, from which I instantly downloaded this childhood game. And oh boy, had this game changed a lot.
Yep.
But we'll talk about that later. For now, let's look at the entire history of War Robots. We'll start off in 2014. The game had just launched, and along with it came 6 robots, 9 weapons, and 1 map. Fast forward to 2024, there are more than 83 robots, 149 weapons, and 15 maps. These bots included the Natasha, Destrier, Schutz, Vityaz, and more.
Not to mention the million different currencies that came into the game ever since to paywall all of this content, right? But I think more of this is coming in a moment.
For the sake of this video, I won't be saying every single bot that released in that year, otherwise this video would be 50 minutes long. So I'll just go over the highlights and meta bots of that year. Anyways, back to 2014. The gameplay was very slow. The abilities were very minimalistic, if not completely absent for most bots. The actual design of the bots were very similar to military vehicles that we see today, with camouflage present in most paint jobs and no exotic or bright colors being seen. The weapons were also very simple, with spray machine guns and guided missile launchers being the baseline for most of the classic weapons. Obviously, we did have some futuristic weapons, like the Gecko, but all in all, the design and themes of most bots were very grounded and in line with present militaristic designs.
And they were also really well balanced, right? Comparing the Gecko, for example. Yeah, it does good damage at long range, but minimal damage if you compare it to shorter range weapons, right? You wouldn't one-tap people then at long range. You would go with minimal damage when you fire at that range. People going for brawling modes would deal way more damage, so there was a way better balancing going on at that time.
Moving on to 2015, Pixonic, the developers of War Robots, began to experiment more with expanding the possibilities of the game. Maps like Dead City, Shenzhen, and Yamantau were added, along with new robots like the Griffin, Stalker, Rhino, and Carnage. The Carnage was a very notable robot, as it was the first bot to have an energy shield. Over time, more energy shields would be added, but for now, the Carnage was a trailblazer for the future of shields in the meta. To combat the energy shields, a mechanic was implemented for the new energy weapons added that year, such as the Zeus. Energy-based weapons were allowed to penetrate energy shields, and this made weapons like the previously mentioned Zeus and Gecko very useful. The workshop was also added this year, benefiting free-to-play players by allowing them to use up their accumulated silver to produce components of robots and weapons. Additionally, bugs were also fixed, stats were changed on some equipment, and damage would now be dealt the same no matter what the distance the shooter was.
So at that time, the game was just really starting out. Like, it was getting so popular because it was so powerful and so well playable, right? It was just overall an awesome game. Yeah.
In 2016, clans were introduced. At the time, clans didn't serve much purpose, only grouping people together with a tag in front of their name. It wouldn't be until much later in 2024 that clans would get an overhaul.
Yeah.
Anyways, the
Star
notable
bases.
bots added that year would be the Golem, Fujin, Rajin, and Gepard. Fujin was the second robot to have the previously mentioned blue energy shield. In
But
addition
only
to these
stationary.
bots, a trio of bots called the Brit bots were added. These bots had physical heavy shields that would be rotated from the side to the front of the bot, creating extra protection from oncoming enemy fire.
And aside from the Lancelot, they had to bring up the shield or not in order to shield themselves, and also they would be slower when they did it. The Lancelot was a little different there, but yeah.
The new map this year was called Power Plant, containing a large nuclear
My
reactor in
favorite.
the middle and a sunken ship on the side.
I love that map.
Paint jobs were also added this year, allowing for extra customization to robots. In addition to this, events were introduced for the first time this year, beginning with the Halloween event and ending the year off with the Christmas event. The Christmas event brought the last trio of bots for that year, the Wild West robots. These bots had a quick draw mechanic that allowed them to cycle weapons from their back for extra firepower.
But they wouldn't be firing all four at the same time. They would just switch and fire them in sequence, so to speak. So all well balanced right then. Also with the skins, I wish at that time Warabots had gone more the way of focusing on customization and cosmetics rather than actually focusing on providing and selling power, which then came a little bit later. You'll see it here in a moment. But that was a turning point. That could have gone the other way, and I think we would have gotten a great game that is like maybe in some regards as popular as Brawl Stars, which is doing a lot better in terms of how it's monetizing its content, right? With more skins rather than pure power being sold. And that is also a large part of why it's so successful. But let's keep going. And if you, by the way, want to watch some Brawl Stars, I got it here and on the new channel, the Manni Town. You can check it out.
Moving on to 2017, this year was packed full of content, but also gave birth to some hated mechanics that we know of today, such as the black market, which allowed you to gamble your resources just to have a chance to get something worthwhile. Besides that, a lot
Loot
of robot
boxes.
designs were changed to match the ever-changing graphics of the game, which was also being updated. New maps included Moon and Valley, which are to this day some of my favorite maps. Events this year included
Valley is
Lunar
awesome
New
too.
Year, Anniversary, Summer, Halloween, and Christmas events. New bots like the Inquisitor were released later this year, allowing for a new leveling game mechanic. After upgrading your bots to level 2, they can then be upgraded to Mark 2 and be enhanced with better stats and numbers.
So this is when it began. More power layers. Before, one robot, your weapons, level them up to the maximum level. Boom, you got it all, right? At that point, free-to-play players could relatively easy achieve a max robot and be competitive without having to spend. At that point, everything was a-okay. But this is now the moment when new and more power layers and metas are entering the game. The first power layer being Mark II.
The main focus this year was the addition of new modes such as Beacon Rush, Team Deathmatch, and custom games.
Beacon Rush,
Overall,
my
this year
favorite.
came to prove just how much content Pixonic can release in just 1 year, and would serve as a baseline for future years. The year is now 2018, and we are in the year of robots.
This
Over
was the best
18
year for
robots
me.
were added. Seriously, why did so many robots release this year? The notable robots were the ones based on unique abilities
18.
and effects, such as Spectre, Mender, Invader, Roiker, Blitz, and Bulwark.
Alright,
Speaking of Bulwark, this was the bot that introduced something called Aegis. Hey, remember
New
the
type
blue
of
energy
shield.
shields we were talking about earlier? Yeah, well, now there's a yellow one. It can still take damage, but has no weaknesses dedicated to a certain weapon class like the blue shields do.
I like how well he did
Additionally,
all that.
effects were added this
Great
year,
job,
which
man.
were weaknesses that can be applied to your bot, such as suppression, which lowered damage done to other bots, lockdown, which temporarily stopped your robot from moving, and DOT, which stands for damage over time.
Oh god, this stuff ruined a lot of the gameplay for me. Seriously, these effects, awful.
Which was a corrosive effect that, you guessed it, did damage to you over time. The last set of bots added this year was a trio called the Pantheon bots. This set of bots included the Ares, Hades, and Nemesis. These
Yep.
bots were very important because they introduced another type of energy shield to the game,
Purple.
called Absorber Shields. This shield was purple and cannot be destroyed at all, however, it is only up for a limited amount of time. The last important feature of this year was modules, which was extra abilities that could be installed in your bot. These
So many different power layers already coming in just 1 year. Is that crazy? It seems like Pixonic at that point got to this point where they said, all right, the player acquisition phase for this game is over. Let's switch to the monetization phase. And this is exactly what we're seeing here. And this is what's started to go wrong in my opinion.
These modules coordinated with the effects previously mentioned, such as shield breaker and lockdown ammo. Now, I know this might sound overwhelming, but as I said, this was probably the most packed year in terms of content, so just hang in there and stay with me. 2019 started off with the introduction of the Dragon robots, which were brought in with that year's Lunar New Year event. Out of all 3 Dragon robots, one of them,
so good.
Aojun, was incredibly powerful and dominated the meta for the rest of that year until it got nerfed. Absolutely nobody had fun that year with the Aojun melting everything in its line of sight.
True.
Later in that year, Pixonic introduced pilots, which were characters with assigned skills that benefited the
Next
robot
power
they were
layer.
assigned to. Pilots were cool, but eventually players discovered many broken combinations between pilot skills, abilities, modules, weapons, and the list goes on and on and on and on.
Exactly, because you have now these so many different layers of powers that Pixonic had to sell to you to keep you investing, because if they didn't, at some point you would be capped out. You would have everything there is, and you would cease spending because there's no reason to, aside from a new robot here and there and a new weapon type. So they needed completely new layers of powers every couple of months, where you would start to reinvest all together. So you knew you would never be essentially finished with grinding and spending. But the problem was that individually such a power layer wouldn't break the game. But if you had these many different ones with the pilots, the passive modules, active modules, and these effects, right? Meta content. Now suddenly you end up with stuff that is literally undestroyable by somebody who is just casually strolling along. And that is exactly the problem. Individually, each of those layers would have been okay, but not when there's so many of them that can be combined.
Okay guys, the players are complaining, the game is in a bug state, I need thoughts, suggestions, ideas, anyone?
More robots.
Balance the game and fix the bugs.
Anyone else?
How about we take the robots, but we make them even bigger?
You're
Oh,
a
Titans.
genius.
Titans, here we go, next layer of power.
Titans were a
Awesome.
mechanic added late 2019 to war robots. How it worked was, over time, your Titan bar would charge up. This can be achieved by getting kills and dealing damage.
And
Once your
capping
Titan bar
beacons.
was charged, you can deploy your Titan. Titans have much more HP than regular robots and can change the tide of the battle in seconds.
Yep.
Moving on to 2020, the notable bots added this year were the Ravana, which has managed to survive the meta to this day,
Yeah.
and the Behemoth, which at the time had the most firepower in the game, wielding 4 heavy weapons at the same time.
The Ravana
After
is
the main 3
such an
Titans that were
all-rounder.
released in late 2019, 2 other Titans that were released in 2020, the first support Titan, Nodens, and my favorite and main Titan, Mannis. Additionally this year, drones were released. Drones accompanied the bot and gave you many buffs and abilities while fighting. People did not like drones, they were very confusing at the time and required a lot of grinding to use them to the fullest. 2021 saw the major onset of what I like to call the cycle. The cycle goes like this. Step 1, Pixonic introduces a new item and makes it really powerful.
Yep.
Step 2, Pixonic sells it to everybody, making other items inferior to their latest product.
Yep.
And then step 3, Pixonic nerfed the item to the ground, people get upset, but Pixonic quickly introduced the next shiny thing for players to buy. While the cycle was a thing back in 2017, it only became obvious around 2021. Anyways, back to the robots. Another healing robot, the Demeter, was introduced, as well as the Fafnir, which was a very popular pick for people's hangers, until it got nerfed. 2021 also saw the prevalence of the stealth meta, with the robot Orochi and the new Titan Miramets cycling the stealth mechanic and making them almost impossible to kill.
One thing maybe to add here, stealth was a thing that existed long before, even before the Inquisitor, I think, with the Stalker being the first stealth robot. It was a robot, super small, 2 light weapons, it would be able to stealth, but it wasn't going to destroy the all robots around, because it's just got 2 light weapons. So at that point, even the feature of stealth earlier on was an okay feature, right? It wasn't breaking the game. It was just an excellent extra addition to the game and a fun, different, unique playstyle for this robot. Later, of course, they would pick up on the stealth thing and make it an entire meta.
The last major feature of 2021 was the introduction of orbital support, which enabled people to call in a mothership strike onto enemies once their mothership meter was charged.
Yeah, so much
Moving
fun.
on to 2022, this was when I came back to the game, and I landed smack dab in the middle of something I like to call the bendy bullet meta.
Oh,
This
yeah.
was because new weapons were just introduced that could
Right.
shoot around corners, making hiding behind cover not even a useful tactic anymore.
Yep.
Later towards the year, we saw Pixonic experimenting with unique robot designs such as the sphere-shaped Skyros or the lightning-based Seraph. We also had, in my opinion, the coolest Titan released this year, called the Indra. This thing had 3 legs and was a really intimidating enemy on the battlefield. Overall, I believe that this was the last fun era of robots, weapons, and meta. In 2023, a second support Titan was released called the Sirius. Yes, I'm serious, it's really called that.
Yep.
Later down the line, we got a 2.0 version of the Orochi called the Lynx. This was the first robot to have wheels instead of legs, making
And
for an interesting
execution.
design. After that, we got a bunch of annoyingly powerful robots that dominated the meta for the rest of the year. I'll name them off the top of my head. First, the Crisis. This thing had infinite stealth as long as it didn't shoot, and made for a really annoying sniper.
Yep.
Next up, we got the Ophion. This bot was based around a snake that could fly.
Yeah.
Pixonic, okay.
Because
After that,
that's
we
what
got the
snakes do.
Achi...
Ohokochi.
How the... Oh, there we go. The Achikachi. Seriously, who comes
Achikachi.
up with these names? Shortly after, we got the Dagon, which was the first robot with 6 weapon slots and a really strong Aegis. And finally, the last bot of that year, the Curie. This thing deployed tiny little turrets that did massive amounts of damage to even Titans.
And locked you down.
Needless to say, Pixonic does not care at all about balancing items at this point.
Yeah. You know, and let me just say about the robots. If we take away the Titans, the motherships, the pilots, by the way, we were the commanders and pilots of our robots all the time until suddenly pilots came around and now we're the commander. Now we're no longer pilots. Before it would always say, hey pilots, blah 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 blah, we do this and this with the game, and now it says you're commanders, hey commanders, and you're no longer the pilot because they needed a pilot layer feature to as power to add. But what I was gonna say, all of those robots and weapons would have all been fine. I was always for new content, new robots, new weapons, always loved it, right? The problem I had with all of that is that it would always break the game. They could never just make a balanced thing come in. And I would have even understood if a new weapon or a new robot would have been slightly more interesting, because I understand it's a business, the new thing needs to be more relevant in some way, otherwise why would anybody buy it? From a business side of things, obviously the new stuff that they spend time developing has to be purchased too. But there is a limit as to how far you should be able to go with the increase of power on the new content, right? And in order to prevent the power creep of every new content being better than the previous, they nerf the previous content all the time so that the power creep basically stays at 0. But if it was just a little bit better, things would have been fine, but it was so broken. Just freaking look at Subduers, for example.
And finally, this year in 2024, we got a green teleporting cockroach that can zap the of any robot in 2 seconds. We also got a
Cockroach, yeah.
revamped clan system that benefits all players on that clan. Shout out to Dennis Fox.
Yeah,
Then we got
Dennis
a pretty
Fox.
terrible robot, the Pathfinder. This thing absolutely sucks and should be buffed. And finally, we got a sniper titan that has a bowcaster on its side and can also jump. Yeah, Pixar are genuinely running out of ideas. Well, that's about it for the history of war robots.
Well, I mean, at some point, I guess it's probably a little more difficult to come up with new things, right? When you have so many different ideas already in the game. I understand why Pixonic might be recycling some of those ideas, bringing, repeating certain skill elements into another fresh meta set of robots. But we still have so many untapped ideas. You remember our petition where we also gathered ideas, or other occasions in which we gathered like mechanics that could come in, where, for example, a mine layer like we have in Mech Arena, where you can basically area denial a certain amount of a certain space of territory by placing mines, right? Obvious or not so obvious doesn't really matter, but the idea of laying mines hasn't made it into the game even till now. Why in the world hasn't it? And why has so much other nonsense entered the game that nobody has ever asked for? And for the last one, the reason obviously is incumbent money. So Pixonic has went away from from making a game that is so successful and fun for everyone that it attracts an incredible and enormous amount of new people, and is, due to its success, can finance itself easily with advertising partners and having massive income of or influx of new players every day, because it's a healthy and fun game. They've went away from this, and then they have dedicated their path towards this, relying on the top-end 1% super whale spenders. Serving, obviously, from this point on, they have gone this wooden path that they have to walk towards the end, where you have to serve these 1%. You have to keep them happy and paying and in line all the time, allowing them to dominate the entire rest of the battlefield, leaving the other, let's say 95 or 98%, basically chances against those people, because this is your paying customer base now. Instead of the entire player base that could potentially help you to achieve greater success, they relied on those top 1, 2, 3%, whatever. And that is ultimately the death of any game, because it destroys a healthy environment and fun gameplay.
Years have been a repetitive content loop, and we haven't really gotten any interesting new features. So that's why they kind of went by fast. I hope you enjoyed the video.
Definitely did,
because this video took me way too long to make.
I understand, man. That was really well done. Great job, iTalk Games. Again, check him out down in the video description, pinned comment. Send him some love onto this video. Subscribe to him and give him some attention, because that video definitely deserves it. And aside from that, for you guys out there, War Robots has been on my channel for 6-7 years or so, and it was a wonderful game. I loved the time and looking back at it. I'm even considering making some maybe nostalgic videos about the past, or coming up with an idea for that. Because this is something where I can stand behind and say that was a great game, you know? What it has become in the end, unfortunately, isn't really this what I would consider my future, or I can't put my future on it. You understand that I'm, as a content creator, I want to do this for the rest of my life with YouTube, if I can. And that means also I have to be looking out for my future and see I cannot grow with War Robots any further. This game is not dead yet, right? But it has been slowly dying for years, and there is nothing going to change it seems. So I have to look out and change the path. And for this, I chosen one of the most successful games in the history on mobile games, and that's Brawl Stars, because they know how to do free-to-play right. Sure, there are also some problems with new brawlers being a little more powerful and stuff like this, but there aren't these many power layers, and as a free-to-play player, you can easily max out a couple of your brawlers and be 100% competitive with all the others, right? And that is exactly what makes a great and successful game, as you can see with Brawl Stars. I wish War Robots had gone this way, because I believe it could have become a game of similar popularity, with the gameplay generally being fun, if there would have been a focus on fixing lag, hackers, and so matchmaking, you know, making an economy that actually works for the free-to-play player to keep 100% of the player base engaged, attracting new players thanks to their happiness and fun in the game, rather than relying on those top 3% and constantly further and further pushing your players away from the game, and making the gap between those who pay and those who just enjoy the game and drop maybe a couple of dollars occasionally so wide that there is basically no way they can compete with each other in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, and that's also, again, why I'm switching to Brawl Stars being a super successful game. Not gonna lie, the transition is terribly difficult. I've been 3 months fully dedicated to this transition, and it's working not at all. Because even to this point, the algorithm has still not learned that I am trying to switch the audience, that I'm trying to cater to or serve content towards a new player base. It's still serving it to Brawl Stars, players. The War Robots players who don't click on it when it's being played out to them, who don't watch long when they do click. So watch retention terrible, click rate terrible, videos dead at release. They never get the chance to actually even make it to the Brawl Stars players, making it terribly difficult. That's why I've just started a new channel called the Manni-Town, because that's how we do it, the Manni-Town boys. And yeah, I'm trying to see how a new channel behaves compared to the one that is technically large, but is being basically held back by the following it has. Let's see how this works. But yeah, for now, that is a super fun work. Actually, it's kind of a sad video, but it was very well done. So I'm glad I was able to show you this, and you guys go ahead, check out the man who made it, and I'll catch you in my next videos, I guess. So, see you then. Manni signing off. Bye bye, my friends.